Hello, everyone. Welcome to SleepSpace. Tonight, we will talk about whether your consciousness could be connected to someone else in the universe or even in a parallel universe. This is a question that touches the deepest mysteries of existence. What is consciousness? How far does it reach? And could it ever extend beyond the boundaries of your individual mind? We'll journey through neuroscience, physics, philosophy, and the frontiers of imagination to explore whether your thoughts, awareness, and inner life are truly isolated or part of something much larger that spans across people, dimensions, and even realities themselves. Let's begin by grounding ourselves in what consciousness means. At its simplest, consciousness is the fact that you are aware of your thoughts, your surroundings, your body, and even the idea of you. It's the inner movie playing inside your mind, where you are both the director and the main character. But here's the problem. No scientist has been able to fully explain how the brain creates this subjective experience. We know neurons fire, we know chemicals interact, we know signals pass along synapses, but that doesn't explain why any of this activity should feel like something. Why should a bundle of cells produce the richness of thoughts, feelings, and awareness? This mystery is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness, and it opens the door to considering possibilities far beyond our standard models of the brain. Now, if we accept that we don't fully understand consciousness, we can ask, is it possible that consciousness isn't confined to the individual brain at all? Could it be that what we call your consciousness is actually connected to others, whether here in the universe we know or in parallel universes beyond? Strangely, there are clues, scientific, anecdotal, and philosophical, that suggest this might not be as impossible as it first sounds. One of the first places to look is the phenomenon of empathy and intuition. You've probably experienced moments where you sense what someone else is thinking or feeling without them saying a word. Maybe you've thought of someone only to receive a call or message from them moments later. Or perhaps you felt instantly connected to a stranger, as if you'd known them forever. Skeptics call these coincidences or subconscious pattern recognition, but others argue they might hint at deeper connections between minds. Could it be that consciousness has threads that weave between people, much like invisible strings of resonance? Neuroscience is beginning to uncover evidence that brains can synchronize in surprising ways. When people talk, laugh, or even just look at each other, their brain waves can align. Studies using EEG scans show that the rhythms of one person's brain can literally fall into step with another's, creating a kind of neurological harmony. This has been observed in classrooms, concerts, and intimate conversations. It suggests that our minds may not be as isolated as we imagine. They can sync, resonate, and perhaps even share states of awareness. While this doesn't prove a connection to parallel universes, it does challenge the idea that consciousness is a completely sealed off experience. But what if we push further, beyond the human to human connection, into the realm of the universe itself? Here, quantum physics enters the conversation. Quantum mechanics describes the subatomic world, and one of its strangest features is entanglement. Two particles can become linked in such a way that what happens to one instantly affects the other, even across vast distances. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance. Now, if particles can be entangled, what about minds? Could the fundamental building blocks of consciousness operate in a way that allows entanglement across space or even across dimensions? Some researchers have proposed that consciousness might actually emerge from quantum processes inside the brain. This controversial idea, called quantum consciousness, suggests that the strange rules of quantum mechanics, superposition, entanglement, non-locality, could be the foundation of awareness. If that's true, then perhaps consciousness is not confined to one body, but is capable of existing in a shared quantum field, connected to other minds or even to versions of ourselves in parallel universes. Parallel universes themselves are another fascinating layer of this mystery. According to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, every possibility that could happen actually does happen, each outcome branching into a new universe. That means there could be countless versions of you, each living out different lives. But here's the intriguing question. Are those versions truly separate, or could there be connections between them? Could your consciousness in this universe sometimes brush up against your consciousness in another, explaining phenomena like déjà vu, vivid dreams, or sudden flashes of insight that seem to come from nowhere? Let's step back for a moment and think about how information might travel between consciousnesses. If consciousness is not simply generated by the brain, but instead tuned into, like a radio receiving a signal, then perhaps multiple receivers can pick up on the same broadcast. This analogy has been used by philosophers and scientists who believe consciousness is more like a field than a product. If there is a universal field of awareness, then each of us may only be tuning into one channel of it. But sometimes, just sometimes, our channel overlaps with another's. History is full of stories where people seem to access information they should not have. Twins who feel each other's pain across continents. Artists and scientists who come up with the same discoveries at the same time in different parts of the world. Mystics who speak of a universal mind or collective consciousness that all beings share. Even Carl Jung described the collective unconscious, a reservoir of shared archetypes and experiences that transcends individual minds. Could it be that consciousness is like a vast ocean, and each of our personal minds are like waves rising and falling within it? If so, then the connection between people and even between universes may already exist beneath the surface. Of course, not everyone agrees with these ideas. Critics argue that brain synchronization, intuition, and even entanglement can all be explained without invoking a cosmic consciousness. They say that our brains are powerful pattern recognition machines, always finding meaning and connection even where none exists. They remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that no experiment has yet proven consciousness can cross between people or universes. But just because something hasn't been proven doesn't mean it isn't possible. It may simply mean we haven't yet developed the tools to detect it. And here's where imagination and science begin to dance together. Imagine, for instance, that your thoughts are not confined inside your skull, but ripple outward like waves on a pond. Those ripples might interact with the ripples of someone else's consciousness, creating interference patterns that allow for shared experiences, fleeting intuitions, or even connections that span across universes. If parallel realities exist, perhaps the fabric of consciousness can stretch across them, weaving moments where one version of you influences another, or where two minds in different realities briefly touch. This idea may sound like science fiction, but remember, so did black holes, multiple dimensions, and quantum particles once upon a time. What was once imagination can become scientific discovery with the right evidence and tools. As we continue this exploration, we'll dive deeper into the neuroscience, the quantum theories, the strange experiences people report, and the philosophical questions about whether consciousness could truly transcend the boundaries of one brain, one universe, or one lifetime. And through it all, we'll keep returning to that central, wondrous possibility that you are not as separate as you think, that your consciousness might be connected in ways subtle or profound to others out there in the cosmos. or even to other versions of yourself in realities beyond our own. To explore this, let's start with the brain itself. The brain is made up of roughly 86 billion neurons, each one firing electrical impulses and communicating with thousands of others through chemical signals. Together, this creates a vast network of trillions of connections. Neuroscientists often describe the brain as the most complex structure in the known universe. But complexity alone doesn't explain consciousness. You can build a computer with billions of circuits, yet no matter how advanced, it doesn't suddenly wake up and say, I am. Something about brains generates this mysterious quality of awareness. One idea is that consciousness emerges from the way information flows through the brain. Patterns of activity create a self-reinforcing loop, giving rise to awareness of the world and of oneself. But critics argue this doesn't really solve the problem, it just describes it in more detail. Why should a loop of electrical activity feel like anything? And here's where the possibility of connection arises. Maybe consciousness isn't something generated inside, but something tapped into. Think of it like the internet. Each computer can store information, but the real power comes when it connects to the network. Suddenly, a machine is not just a box of circuits, it's part of a global web of information. Perhaps the brain is similar. It may be a biological receiver and transmitter, capable of connecting to a larger field of consciousness that spans people, places, and maybe even universes. If that's the case, then your conscious experience is not truly yours alone. You might be drawing from a shared pool, and sometimes, under certain conditions, that pool allows for overlap with others. What kind of conditions could allow this? Emotional intensity seems to play a role. In moments of great love, fear, or crisis, people often report uncanny connections to others. Parents waking in the night sensing something is wrong with their child miles away. Soldiers feeling a bond with comrades that transcends words. Couples finishing each other's sentences or knowing each other's thoughts without speaking. These experiences suggest that strong emotional states might amplify whatever link exists between minds. There's also the role of altered states of consciousness. Meditation, deep relaxation, near-death experiences, and even psychedelic states are often reported to dissolve the boundary of the self. People describe feeling connected to everything, as though their personal awareness melted into a universal sea of consciousness. Sometimes they claim to encounter beings or entities, or even alternate versions of themselves. Are these hallucinations or genuine glimpses of a greater reality? We can't say for certain, but it's striking how many different cultures and traditions describe similar experiences. From ancient shamans to modern-day mystics, there is a recurring theme. The idea that the mind can travel beyond its body, touch others, or move through dimensions. Indigenous traditions speak of dreamtime journeys. Eastern philosophies describe the dissolution of the ego into oneness. Western mystics speak of divine union. Across the globe, humans have long felt that consciousness is not bound by skin and skull, but extends outward in ways science is only beginning to explore. Let's bring physics back into the picture. If consciousness is somehow related to quantum phenomena, then we need to consider what that would mean. Quantum entanglement, as we mentioned earlier, allows particles to remain mysteriously linked across distance. Imagine if tiny quantum processes inside the brain could entangle not just with nearby particles, but with distant ones, or even with particles in parallel universes. In that scenario, your thoughts could in principle be influenced by events happening elsewhere, and your awareness might sometimes align with another's. There are even experiments that hint, though controversially, at the possibility of mind-to-mind connection. In some studies, one person is placed in a room and shown flashes of light or patterns that stimulate brain activity. Another person, often far away, is monitored with an EEG. Researchers have claimed that subtle but noticeable changes occur in the second person's brain waves at the same moments the first person experiences stimulation. If true, this would suggest that information can travel directly between consciousnesses without ordinary sensory channels. While mainstream science remains skeptical, these experiments keep the question alive. Are our minds broadcasting signals that others can receive? If consciousness is a field, then perhaps it's more accurate to think of each of us as individual instruments playing in a vast orchestra. Most of the time, we hear only our own melody, but sometimes the harmonies overlap and we catch echoes of another instrument. This might explain why people occasionally experience thoughts, feelings, or images that don't seem to originate from themselves. It might also explain the eerie sensation of déjà vu, the feeling that you've lived this moment before. Could it be that you're brushing against the consciousness of another version of you in a parallel universe, experiencing a moment they have already lived? Speaking of parallel universes, let's explore what they might actually be. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every quantum event splits reality into multiple branches, each as real as the one we perceive. In one universe, you took a walk today. In another, you stayed inside. In one, you made a life-changing decision. In another, you chose differently. These branching realities create an almost infinite number of versions of you. Now imagine that these versions are not completely separate, but sometimes bleed into each other. Could your consciousness, which may be quantum in nature, stretch across these versions, connecting them like threads of a single tapestry? Some people claim to have experienced dreams so vivid they feel like alternate lives. Others have sudden flashes of knowledge about situations they've never encountered. If parallel universes exist, maybe your consciousness sometimes shifts, however briefly, to perceive through the eyes of another you. And if those universes are not isolated, then it's possible your decisions, emotions, and awareness might influence not just your reality, but countless others. This raises an astonishing possibility. Maybe your consciousness is not a single point, but a vast network spanning many worlds. What you experience as you might just be the tip of the iceberg, the part of your awareness currently focused here. Beneath the surface, there could be countless layers, each connected to other people, other versions of yourself, and perhaps to something even greater, a universal mind that unites all beings and all realities. Philosophers and scientists alike have toyed with similar ideas. Some propose panpsychism, the view that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. In this view, every particle has some tiny spark of awareness, and complex systems like brains amplify it. If this is true, then the universe itself might be conscious, and we are fragments of its awareness. That would make connection not just possible, but inevitable. We wouldn't merely be individuals trying to reach out across the void. We would already be interconnected expressions of a single universal consciousness. There's also the idea of the holographic universe, where reality is not what it seems, but is encoded like a hologram. In a hologram, every piece contains the whole. If reality works the same way, then each of us might carry the entire cosmos within our consciousness. That would mean not only could we be connected to others in this universe, but perhaps to counterparts in parallel ones as well. Skeptics might argue that these are speculative, even fantastical ideas, and they're right. There is no conclusive evidence that consciousness can link across universes. But science itself is no stranger to radical shifts. Once people thought the Earth was the center of the universe. That time was absolute, and that the atom was indivisible. Each of these beliefs was overturned by discoveries that revealed a stranger, more interconnected reality than anyone had imagined. It is not unreasonable to think that consciousness, too, may one day be understood in ways that defy our current assumptions. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is that the question of connection isn't just about science, it's also about meaning. If consciousness can connect across people, places, and universes, then the way we treat others takes on a new dimension. Hurting someone else could be, in a very real sense, hurting another part of yourself. Acts of kindness might ripple out not only through this world, but through countless realities. Our lives may be more entwined than we know, and our choices may carry consequences far beyond what we can see. In the end, whether we frame it in terms of neuroscience, quantum physics, philosophy, or spirituality, the possibility that consciousness is connected challenges us to rethink who we are. Are we isolated minds trapped in biological machines, or are we nodes in a vast web of awareness reaching across distances and dimensions? The answer may shape not only our understanding of reality, but also how we live within it. To understand how your consciousness might be connected to others, we need to explore the bridge between subjective experience and objective reality. Consciousness is deeply personal. You feel it as your thoughts, emotions, and awareness. But at the same time, it seems to interact with the physical world in measurable ways. If consciousness can affect matter, and matter can be entangled across space and time, then it's not unreasonable to suggest that consciousness itself could reach far beyond what we usually assume. Consider for a moment the role of attention. When you direct your focus onto something, your brain changes. Neurons fire differently, pathways strengthen, and signals amplify. But attention isn't only about the brain, it influences the world around you. Experiments have shown that people who focus on a task, such as trying to influence the behavior of random number generators, sometimes produce results that deviate slightly from chance. While these effects are small and controversial, they hint that the mind might have a subtle ability to shape outcomes. If consciousness can interact with the physical world, even in tiny ways, then it opens the door to connections on a larger scale. One of the most famous demonstrations of this comes from the observer effect in quantum mechanics. In the double-slit experiment, particles of light behave like waves when unobserved, creating an interference pattern. But when measured or observed, they collapse into behaving like particles. This suggests that the act of observation itself changes reality. Some interpret this as proof that consciousness directly influences the physical world. Others argue it's the measuring device, not the mind, that makes the difference. Still, the mystery remains. How can awareness and reality be so intimately linked? If your observation can shape outcomes in one universe, could your awareness also touch outcomes in others? Now let's look at the intriguing possibility of non-local mind. Non-locality is a concept from physics that describes how entangled particles remain connected regardless of distance. If one is altered, the other instantly reflects the change, even across galaxies. Non-locality breaks the traditional idea of separateness. Some theorists suggest that consciousness itself may operate non-locally, untethered from the brain. In this view, your awareness is not confined to your head, but exists as part of a larger field that transcends space and time. If this is true, then consciousness could easily stretch to others, and even to counterparts of yourself in parallel universes. Another fascinating area is near-death experiences. Across cultures and ages, people who have come close to death often describe similar patterns: floating outside the body, seeing a tunnel of light, encountering loved ones or beings of wisdom. and experiencing a profound sense of unity with all that exists. Some even claim to have accessed knowledge they couldn't have known otherwise. For skeptics, these experiences are simply brain chemistry under extreme stress. But for others, they point to consciousness existing independently of the brain, something that can leave, expand, and connect. If awareness can detach from one body, what's to stop it from merging with others or exploring realities beyond our own? Dreams also offer tantalizing clues. In dreams, the laws of space and time bend, and consciousness becomes a traveler in strange landscapes. Some people report shared dreams, where two individuals experience the same dream space and recall overlapping details upon waking. Others describe lucid dreams, where they encounter guides, loved ones, or beings that feel entirely real. If dreams are merely the random firing of neurons, why would multiple people sometimes share the same dream content? One possibility is that dreams are gateways into a shared layer of consciousness, a meeting ground where minds intersect. If that's true, then dreams may not only connect people here, but also provide access to alternate realities, parallel universes glimpsed in the theatre of sleep. To better imagine how consciousness might work this way, picture a vast cosmic web. Each point on the web is a person, a being, or a version of you in another universe. Threads of awareness connect each point, some strong and bright, others faint and hidden. Most of the time, you're only aware of your own point on the web. But sometimes, under certain conditions, the threads light up, and you feel a pull from another node. It could be another person's thought, a flash of intuition, or a whisper from a parallel self. The web is always there, whether you notice it or not, weaving together the tapestry of consciousness across all existence. Another way to approach this is through the idea of resonance. Everything in the universe vibrates. Atoms, molecules, cells, and even thought patterns. When two systems vibrate at the same frequency, they resonate with each other. This is why a singer can shatter a glass with just the right pitch. Now imagine if consciousness has a vibrational frequency as well. When two minds are tuned to similar frequencies, they might resonate, creating a connection. This could explain why some people feel instantly in sync, or why you might think of someone right before they reach out to you. Resonance could also extend across dimensions, allowing parallel versions of you to align and share flashes of experience. Philosophy offers another lens, the concept of the collective consciousness. Carl Jung believed that beneath our individual psyches lies a shared unconscious that contains the archetypes of human experience. This collective layer shapes myths, symbols, and universal themes that appear in every culture. If Jung was right, then our minds are already connected at a deep level. We're not isolated islands of awareness, but waves in the same ocean of mind. Extending this further, perhaps the collective unconscious is not limited to this universe alone. If parallel realities exist, then their consciousness may also feed into the collective, creating a vast, multidimensional reservoir of awareness. But if consciousness is connected in these ways, why don't we notice it all the time? Why aren't we constantly overwhelmed by the thoughts and feelings of others? The answer might be that the brain acts as a filter. Instead of generating consciousness, it may narrow it down, focusing your awareness so you can function in daily life. Think of a radio tuner. The signal is always out there, but you only hear the station you're tuned to. Occasionally, though, the dial slips, and you pick up a different channel. Perhaps moments of intuition, déjà vu, or sudden insight are examples of your consciousness momentarily tuning into another frequency, whether from another person or another universe. Interestingly, some altered states seem to open the filter. Psychedelic substances, meditation, or even deep states of flow can quiet the brain's usual patterns and allow a wider spectrum of awareness. People in these states often describe feeling connected to others, to the universe, or to alternate realms. Modern brain imaging studies confirm that during such states, the usual networks that define the self quiet down, while connectivity across the brain increases. In other words, the boundaries of self become looser, allowing the possibility of connection beyond. Let's also consider time. We usually think of time as a straight line, moving from past to present to future. But physics suggests time may be far stranger. Relativity shows that time bends and stretches depending on gravity and speed. Quantum theory hints that the future may influence the present, and some interpretations even suggest all moments exist simultaneously. If consciousness is not bound by linear time, then perhaps it can connect across timelines as well as across universes. That might explain precognitive dreams, déjà vu, or sudden insights about future events. Your consciousness could be brushing against another timeline, another version of you, or another person's awareness across time itself. Of course, there's always the skeptical viewpoint. Many scientists argue that experiences of connection, shared dreams, or intuition are products of coincidence, memory errors, or the brain's tendency to find patterns. They warn against projecting mysteries onto phenomena we don't yet understand. But even skeptics agree that the brain is deeply interconnected with the world, shaped by social interaction, culture, and environment. Whether or not there's a literal consciousness field, we know that humans are profoundly linked in ways that extend beyond the individual. Still, it's worth noting that much of what we now take for granted once seemed impossible. The idea that invisible waves could carry voices across continents was unthinkable before radio. The notion that invisible particles could be entangled across galaxies would have seemed like fantasy a century ago. If these discoveries were once beyond imagination, perhaps the same is true of consciousness today. If consciousness is connected, then one of the most intriguing questions becomes, what are the boundaries of that connection? Is it limited to people we know, or can it extend to strangers, to animals, to the entire universe, or even to parallel versions of ourselves? To begin untangling this, let's look at some of the most compelling accounts that suggest consciousness may indeed spill beyond the edges of individuality. One category is the phenomenon of telepathy, the apparent direct exchange of thoughts between minds. Telepathy has been reported in nearly every culture, from ancient shamans communicating in silence to modern individuals who swear they can sense what another person is about to say. Controlled experiments have tried to test this, often with mixed results, but some stand out. In the Gansfeld experiments, one person, called the sender, focuses on an image while another, the receiver, sits in sensory isolation. The receiver then describes impressions that come to mind. Over many trials, researchers found that receivers correctly identified the target image at rates higher than chance. While not conclusive, these results raise the possibility that minds might share information in ways science cannot yet explain. If telepathy is real, even in rare moments, it would mean consciousness can cross the apparent barrier between individuals. But what if this is only the beginning? If your awareness can sometimes blend with someone else's here? What's to say it couldn't also overlap with a version of you in another universe? Perhaps the sensation of hearing yourself think is sometimes more literal than we realize. It might be an echo from a parallel self, whose consciousness is threaded to yours through dimensions we can't yet measure. Another area to examine is collective experience. Throughout history, groups of people have reported shared visions, mass inspirations, or simultaneous ideas. For example, Many scientific discoveries have been made independently by different individuals at the same time. Calculus was developed by Newton and Leibniz within the same period, even though they worked separately. Darwin and Wallace both came up with the theory of evolution independently. This phenomenon, called multiple discovery, could be explained by cultural context or similar access to information, but it also raises the question, could consciousness itself be transmitting ideas across individuals? If there's a shared field of mind, then perhaps great concepts ripple through it, accessible to anyone tuned to the right frequency. This leads us to creativity. Artists, musicians, and writers often describe inspiration as if it comes from somewhere outside themselves. They channel ideas, hear melodies in dreams, or feel as though a story was given to them rather than invented. Where does this creativity come from? One possibility is that it arises from the depths of the unconscious. Another is that it's drawn from a collective pool, a place where minds connect, and where ideas live independently, waiting to be discovered. If so, then inspiration might be evidence of minds brushing against one another, or against versions of themselves in alternate realities where those ideas already exist. Parallel universes offer especially fertile ground for imagining how connection could work. Let's suppose that for every decision you make, another universe splits off where you chose differently. In one universe, you studied art. In another, science. In another, you took a job overseas. Now imagine that all of these yous are not entirely separate, but tethered at some deep level of consciousness. That could mean that flashes of talent, intuition, or sudden knowledge are bleed-throughs from another self. Maybe your skill at painting comes not just from practice here, but from connection to a version of you who has devoted a lifetime to art. Perhaps that strange familiarity with a place you've never visited comes from another you who lives there. There are even reports of people experiencing what might be glimpses of these parallel selves. Some describe dreams where they live alternate lives in vivid detail, remembering names, relationships, and events that don't exist here. Others have moments in waking life that feel like bleed-throughs, sudden, inexplicable memories of things that never happened. If consciousness is connected across universes, then these anomalies may not be imagination, but echoes of other realities that occasionally filter into awareness. Let's also consider empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel what another person feels. On one level, it can be explained by mirror neurons, specialized cells in the brain that fire both when you perform an action and when you see someone else perform it. This gives you an inner simulation of their experience, but empathy often goes beyond observation. People can sense emotions without any outward signs or feel physical sensations that mirror another's pain. There are documented cases of sympathetic pregnancies, where a partner experiences nausea, cravings, and even labor pains alongside a pregnant person. If empathy is more than biology, it could be a window into shared consciousness, a subtle merging of awareness that allows feelings to pass directly from one being to another. If such merging is possible, then the boundary between self and other becomes porous. Perhaps what you call you is just a convenient illusion, a line drawn around one set of experiences. But in truth, that line may blur at the edges, allowing for overlap with others and with alternate versions of yourself. The philosopher William James once said that consciousness is not a thing, but a process, more like a stream than a container. If consciousness is flowing, then streams can join, split, and reconnect. You may not always notice it, but sometimes your awareness might be part of a larger current that includes others across space, and possibly across universes. This brings us to the question of what happens when many minds connect at once. Some traditions speak of the noosphere, a sphere of collective thought surrounding the Earth. The idea is that as human consciousness evolves, it forms a kind of planetary mind, linking individuals together. Projects like the Global Consciousness Project have even tried to measure this, placing random number generators around the world to see if they shift during major global events. Interestingly, data suggests that during times of collective focus, such as global tragedies or celebrations, the machines deviate from randomness. Some interpret this as evidence that mass consciousness can influence the physical world. If that's true, then your mind might already be contributing to a field that connects us all. And what if this noosphere isn't limited to Earth? If parallel universes exist, each with their own beings and civilizations, then perhaps each one contributes to a larger cosmic field. Consciousness may not stop at the edges of a single reality. Instead, it could be a vast, interconnected web spanning multiple dimensions, with each individual mind both separate and unified at the same time. The implications are profound. If your consciousness is connected, then individuality may be more of a perspective than an absolute. You experience life as you, but behind that personal lens may lie an awareness that is shared, collective, and universal. This doesn't diminish your uniqueness. It means your uniqueness is one expression of something much larger. Skeptics would again point out that none of this has been conclusively proven, and they are right. It remains in the realm of speculation, supported by intriguing hints but not definitive evidence. Yet science often advances by exploring the boundaries of the unknown. Once, the existence of other galaxies was unthinkable. Now we know there are billions. Once, the idea of invisible forces shaping matter was dismissed. Now we understand electromagnetism, gravity, and quantum fields. Consciousness may be the next frontier, something that expands our view of reality far beyond the brain and body. Ultimately, the possibility of connected consciousness challenges us to rethink what it means to be human, to exist, and to be aware. It asks us to see ourselves not as isolated sparks, but as part of a great fire, not as solitary streams, but as currents in a boundless ocean. Whether through empathy, intuition, dreams, creativity, or parallel selves, the evidence suggests that we may already be connected in ways we are only beginning to glimpse. If consciousness is truly connected, then perhaps the most fascinating question is not whether it happens, but why. What would be the purpose of a universe where minds can reach beyond themselves, touching others, or even crossing into parallel realities? To approach this, let's explore some of the deeper patterns in nature and see how consciousness might fit into them. The universe seems to favor networks. From the cosmic web of galaxies stretching across billions of light years, to the branching of rivers and trees, to the neural networks in your brain, reality organizes itself in interconnected patterns. This fractal design suggests that connectivity is not accidental but fundamental. If matter and energy follow this rule, why wouldn't consciousness? In fact, it may be that consciousness itself is one of the most profound networks in existence. A living web where each node is a mind, each thread a pathway of awareness. If we think of consciousness this way, then connection may serve the same function as it does in any network: resilience, growth, and evolution. A single mind, isolated, can only perceive so much. But when linked with others, knowledge and experience multiply. Perhaps connected consciousness allows for the exchange of information across individuals, across species, and even across universes. It might be nature's way of ensuring that awareness evolves, spreading insights far beyond a single perspective. Let's consider language as an analogy. Before humans developed speech, communication was limited to gestures, expressions, and sounds. Language created a leap in evolution by allowing thoughts to be shared directly. Writing extended that leap across time and distance. The internet extended it further still, creating instantaneous global exchange. If these are material networks of communication, then consciousness connection could be the immaterial counterpart, a direct sharing of thought, experience, or even identity itself. Some researchers have suggested that what we call intuition might be a subtle form of this sharing. Intuition often feels like knowing without knowing why. You sense the right choice, feel the truth of something, or predict an outcome without logical reasoning. Skeptics say it's pattern recognition at a subconscious level, but another possibility is that intuition is borrowed insight, knowledge streaming in from others in the network, or from parallel versions of yourself who have already faced the same decision. If so, then intuition is not just a personal tool, but a glimpse into the greater field of connected minds. Now let's take this further. What if this connection isn't limited to humans? Many people feel a deep bond with animals, describing moments where they seem to communicate without words. Pets often appear to sense their owner's emotions or intentions before any visible cues. Wild animals sometimes act in ways that suggest a shared awareness. Flocks of birds turning as one, schools of fish moving with perfect synchrony, herds of animals sensing danger long before it arrives. Scientists explain this as instinct and collective behavior, but some argue that it could also be evidence of a shared field of consciousness linking beings together. If animals are part of this network, then perhaps consciousness is not human-centered at all. Instead, it might be a universal property of life, one that binds all organisms. Extending this even further, if consciousness is fundamental to the universe, then perhaps even seemingly inanimate matter participates in it at some level. Stones, stars, and atoms might hold sparks of awareness, woven into the fabric of reality. This is the perspective of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness is everywhere, in everything. In this framework, connectedness is not the exception, but the rule. Parallel universes add yet another layer. Imagine that every choice branches reality into multiple outcomes. If your consciousness is tethered to each version of yourself, then the entire multiverse is not just a set of separate paths, but a single multidimensional self. You are not one person, but many, living countless lives across infinite realities. What feels like individuality may be just one perspective in a far larger whole. Sometimes awareness might blur, allowing you to sense another version of yourself. These moments could appear as déjà vu, sudden flashes of knowledge, or dreams that feel like alternate lives. The implications of this are staggering. If you are connected to parallel selves, then death may not mean the end of consciousness, but simply a shift of focus from one thread to another. If you are connected to others, then compassion is not just a moral choice, but an acknowledgement of unity. If you are connected to the universe itself, then perhaps your thoughts, feelings, and actions ripple outward in ways far beyond what you imagine. But let's pause and ask, if consciousness is so connected, why do we usually experience life as isolated individuals? One possibility is that individuality is necessary for survival. Imagine if you constantly felt every thought and emotion of everyone else. You'd be overwhelmed. The boundaries of self may function like a filter, allowing you to focus on your immediate experience. Occasionally, however, that filter thins and connections slip through. These moments might come in dreams, intuitions, synchronicities, or altered states. They remind us that while individuality is useful, it may not be the ultimate truth. Modern neuroscience gives us a hint of how this filtering works. The brain doesn't process reality directly, it constructs a model of the world. You don't see reality as it is, you see a brain-generated simulation that's useful for survival. If the brain is already filtering and shaping what you perceive, then perhaps it also filters consciousness itself. You experience a narrow band of awareness, like a flashlight beam in a dark room, while the vast expanse of connected consciousness remains outside your focus. Under special conditions, the beam widens, and you glimpse the greater whole. Some traditions describe this process as awakening or enlightenment. Mystics across cultures report experiences where the sense of separation dissolves and they feel one with all things. They describe an overwhelming unity, a realization that all beings are expressions of the same awareness. Whether framed as union with God, merging with the cosmos, or dissolving into pure consciousness, these accounts share striking similarities. They suggest that the connectedness of consciousness is not theoretical but experiential, accessible to those who quiet the filters of the mind. From a scientific perspective, this is difficult to measure. How do you test for unity with the cosmos? But neuroscience has found that during such states, certain brain networks, particularly those involved in self-referential thinking, become less active. At the same time, connectivity across the brain increases, allowing for a more global sense of awareness. This matches the subjective reports of dissolving boundaries and feeling interconnected. It doesn't prove that consciousness is shared, but it shows how the brain might open itself to that possibility. Another angle is the idea of morphic fields proposed by biologist Rupert Sheldrake. He suggests that nature has memory, and that patterns of behavior are influenced by fields that extend beyond individuals. For example, when one group of animals learns a new behavior, others of the same species may find it easier to learn, even far away. If true, this would mean that consciousness creates and contributes to fields that others can tap into. Applied to humans, it could explain cultural trends, simultaneous discoveries, and the feeling of shared awareness during collective events. It could also hint at a mechanism for connection across parallel realities, with each version of you contributing to a larger morphic field that all can access. Skeptics argue that these ideas lack hard evidence and risk sliding into speculation, but even they acknowledge that the brain is more mysterious than we understand, and that consciousness remains unexplained by material science alone. The possibility of connected consciousness, whether through morphic fields, quantum entanglement, or universal mind, remains on the frontier of inquiry. If consciousness is connected, then perhaps our role is to learn how to engage with that connection more consciously. Instead of random flashes of intuition or unconscious empathy, we might one day develop methods to deliberately link minds, share experiences, or even access parallel selves. Imagine a future where communication is not limited by language but occurs directly, mind to mind. Imagine being able to draw wisdom from versions of yourself across universes. Imagine humanity awakening to the realization that we are not many, but one, expressing itself in countless forms. This vision may sound like science fiction, but so did many of today's realities just a century ago. The idea that invisible waves could carry voices across the world was once absurd. The notion that particles could exist in multiple states at once was once impossible. Consciousness, too, may reveal itself to be far stranger, more expansive, and more connected than we ever dreamed. Sometimes the most compelling evidence for unseen connections comes not from theories, but from personal stories, moments that defy explanation, yet are deeply felt. One recurring theme across cultures is the phenomenon of shared thoughts or simultaneous experiences. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and suddenly they call or send a message. You start humming a tune, and the person beside you begins singing the exact same song without knowing why. Two people across the globe invent nearly identical technologies at almost the same time. These coincidences, often dismissed as chance, are so common that they form a pattern in themselves. Perhaps they are not accidents at all, but the natural consequence of a shared field of mind. Consider the bond between twins. Stories abound of identical twins sensing each other's pain, emotions, or even life events despite being separated by great distances. A twin might awaken in the middle of the night, overwhelmed with dread, only to later discover that the other suffered an accident at that exact moment. Such cases have been documented often enough to warrant scientific study, though conventional explanations remain elusive. If twins, who share both genetics and deep emotional bonds, can experience such links, could it be that all humans are connected, but twins simply provide the clearest window into the phenomenon? Telepathy, while controversial, has been tested in laboratory settings. In controlled experiments, one person attempts to send an image, thought, or emotion to another at a distance. While results are mixed, some studies have shown correlations higher than chance, suggesting that a genuine transfer of information may occur. Skeptics argue that flaws in experimental design or statistical anomalies explain the results, but others see these findings as early glimpses of a larger truth, that minds are not as separate as they appear. Dreams offer another realm where connections seem to manifest. There are accounts of two people dreaming the same dream, meeting each other within it, and later recalling shared details. Dreams that predict events, precognitive dreams, are also reported, as if the dreamer's consciousness reaches forward or sideways in time to glimpse another reality. If dreams are indeed portals to other dimensions of awareness, they may provide opportunities for consciousness to intertwine across individuals and universes. Beyond anecdotal accounts, physics itself points toward interconnectedness. Quantum entanglement shows us that particles can remain linked regardless of distance, their states mirroring each other instantly. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and while it seems bizarre, it is a verified feature of reality. If the building blocks of matter can be entangled, could consciousness, if it is indeed tied to the quantum realm, also be entangled? Could our thoughts, emotions, and awareness resonate with others in ways that transcend space and time? The holographic principle offers another clue. Some physicists propose that the universe is like a hologram, where every part contains the information of the whole. In a hologram, if you break it into pieces, each fragment still holds the complete image, though at lower resolution. If consciousness mirrors this structure, then each mind may contain the whole universe within it, while simultaneously being part of a greater unity. In such a model, connecting to another consciousness would not require crossing distance, but simply shifting focus, since the entire field of awareness is already present within you. From a psychological perspective, Carl Jung introduced the concept of the collective unconscious. He believed that beneath personal memories lies a deeper layer shared by all humanity, filled with archetypes and symbols that appear across cultures and eras. Myths from opposite sides of the world echo one another, carrying similar themes of creation, struggle, transformation, and rebirth. Jung suggested that these patterns are expressions of a shared psychic foundation, evidence that consciousness itself is interconnected at a profound level. If we extend this idea, the collective unconscious could be not just a repository of symbols, but a living network of awareness. When you resonate with a story, feel kinship with a stranger, or experience empathy for someone you've never met, you might be tapping into this shared reservoir. It may be the invisible thread that links all human experience, weaving each life into a collective tapestry. Let's return to parallel universes. Imagine that consciousness is like a radio signal. Your brain is the receiver tuned to one particular station, your current life. But countless other stations exist, broadcasting other versions of you. Occasionally, the tuning slips, and you catch a fragment of another broadcast. This could explain sudden insights, déjà vu, or dreams of unfamiliar yet strangely familiar lives. If others are also receivers within this vast field, then sometimes signals overlap, allowing one consciousness to touch another. There are even theories that moments of strong emotion, love, grief, joy, or fear, amplify the signal. This might explain why so many reports of connection involve heightened states. A mother senses her child is in danger. Lovers separated by distance feel each other's emotions. Communities experiencing tragedy or celebration describe a collective energy that unites them. In these moments, individual boundaries soften, and the field of shared consciousness becomes more accessible. What if, in parallel universes, connections are even stronger? Imagine another version of you making a life-changing decision, and the ripple of that choice subtly influencing your own thoughts. Imagine countless selves contributing wisdom, fear, hope, or courage into the shared field, shaping the trajectory of all versions of you. It would mean that your life is not lived in isolation, but in resonance with infinite possibilities. Every breakthrough you experience might uplift other versions of yourself. Every act of kindness might ripple across realities, strengthening the network of connected consciousness. Technology may one day help us explore these connections directly. Brain-to-brain communication experiments are already underway, where signals from one brain are translated into electrical patterns and transmitted into another. Early tests have shown that simple messages like yes or no can be sent without speaking. While primitive, this suggests that direct mind-to-mind exchange is possible, at least through technological mediation. If machines can bridge minds, perhaps consciousness itself already has that capacity inherently, waiting for us to recognize and refine it. Still, the question remains: if we are connected, why don't we experience it all the time? Perhaps the connection is like an ocean, and each individual mind is a wave. From the surface, waves look separate, rising and falling individually. Yet beneath, they are all part of the same body of water. Most of the time, we identify as the wave, focusing on our individual rise and fall. Only occasionally do we glimpse the ocean that unites us. Philosophical traditions across the world echo this imagery. Hinduism describes Brahman, the ultimate reality of which all individual souls are part. Buddhism speaks of interdependence, where all phenomena arise in relation to one another, and the self is an illusion. Indigenous traditions often emphasize the web of life, a spiritual interconnectedness that binds humans, animals, plants, and the earth itself. These perspectives, while differing in language, converge on the idea that consciousness is not isolated but fundamentally interwoven. If this is true, it has profound implications for how we live. It suggests that harm to others is harm to oneself, since separation is only apparent. It suggests that empathy is not just an emotional capacity, but a reflection of reality. It suggests that the pursuit of knowledge, creativity, and growth by one individual enriches the entire field of consciousness. And it hints that the boundaries of what we call self may be far more flexible than we imagine. Consider how this perspective reshapes our understanding of love. We often think of love as a bond between two separate people, but if consciousness is connected, then love might be the recognition of unity already present. It is not something created, but something revealed. a moment when the illusion of separation fades and the underlying connection shines through. This is why love can feel transcendent, timeless, and beyond words. It is a direct glimpse of the shared consciousness that underlies existence. Of course, one might ask, if this is true, why is the world so divided? Why do conflicts, misunderstandings, and cruelty persist? The answer may lie in the filters of perception. While the field of consciousness is connected, our individual minds are conditioned by culture, memory, fear, and desire. These filters distort perception, creating the illusion of separation and opposition. The task, then, is not to create connection, but to clear the filters that obscure it. Through self-awareness, compassion, and expanded states of consciousness, we may begin to experience the unity that has always been there. The beauty of this possibility is that it reframes the purpose of existence. Life is not a solitary journey, but a shared exploration. Growth is not only personal, but collective. Death is not the end, but a shift of awareness within the larger field. Even the smallest actions ripple outward, influencing others in ways unseen. To live with this awareness is to live with deeper responsibility, deeper wonder, and deeper connection. And yet, the mystery remains. We cannot measure consciousness directly, nor can we fully explain its nature. The possibility of connection across minds, across universes, and across realities remains just that, a possibility. But it is a possibility that invites us to look at our experiences differently. Instead of dismissing moments of synchronicity, intuition, or shared feeling, we can consider them as clues. Instead of seeing ourselves as isolated, we can experiment with the idea that we are threads in a vast, living tapestry. In doing so, we may find that the universe feels less cold and random, and more alive and meaningful. Perhaps the purpose of these connections is not to be proven in a laboratory, but to be lived, explored, and embodied. In the end, the question is not only whether consciousness is connected, but how we choose to participate in that connection, whether through love, curiosity, creativity, or the simple act of being present with the mystery of existence. What does that connection actually feel like? How would you recognize it in your own life? The answer may not lie in dramatic, supernatural events, but in the subtle threads of everyday experience. Threads that become visible when we pay attention. One of the most common signs of connected consciousness is synchronicity. Coincidences so meaningful they feel impossible to ignore. You think about a friend for the first time in months, and within minutes they text you. You ask a silent question, and an answer appears in an unexpected place. A book, a song lyric, a stranger's comment. Skeptics chalk these up to chance, but the sheer frequency and emotional impact suggests something deeper. Jung describes synchronicity as a causal connecting principle, implying that it arises not from direct cause and effect, but from the underlying unity of mind and reality. If the universe itself is conscious, or if minds are woven into its fabric, then synchronicities could be the ripples of connection surfacing into perception. Another sign is empathy that transcends the ordinary. Most people can relate to feeling the emotions of those around them, but there are stories of empathy that go far beyond simple observation. A person suddenly feels overwhelming sadness, only to discover that a loved one across the world was grieving at that very moment. Others describe being flooded with joy or peace during global events of celebration, or sensing collective fear during times of crisis. These moments suggest that emotion may not be confined to the individual, but can radiate and be received through a shared field of awareness. Altered states of consciousness also provide glimpses of connection. Meditation, deep prayer, psychedelic experiences, and even intense creative flow often dissolve the sense of individuality. In these states, people report feeling at one with others, with nature, or with the entire cosmos. They describe perceiving information or insights that seem to come from beyond themselves. Scientists studying such states find changes in brain activity consistent with reduced boundaries between self and world, which could point toward an opening to collective consciousness. But what about the idea of connection across parallel universes? If there are infinite versions of you, then perhaps some of the strangest experiences we have, like déjà vu, are echoes of those parallel lives. Déjà vu feels like remembering the present, as though you've lived it before. One theory is that it's just a brain glitch, a misfiring of memory systems. But another view is that déjà vu occurs when your consciousness briefly syncs with a parallel version of yourself, experiencing the same moment in a slightly different reality. That overlap creates the uncanny sense of familiarity. Lucid dreams may also serve as a bridge to parallel selves. Some dreamers report visiting entire worlds that feel as real and coherent as waking life, with landscapes, people, and histories they've never known before. Sometimes these worlds repeat across dreams, as though the dreamer has a second life unfolding in another dimension. If consciousness is connected to parallel realities, dreams might be one of the places where the boundary thins, allowing crossovers to occur. We can even ask whether inventions and breakthroughs might sometimes be products of connected consciousness. History is full of examples where multiple people independently discovered the same thing at nearly the same time. Calculus was developed by both Newton and Leibniz. Darwin and Wallace both conceived of natural selection. The telephone, the light bulb, and countless other technologies had multiple inventors working in parallel. This could be explained by cultural trends and similar conditions, but it could also suggest that once an idea emerges in one mind, it becomes more accessible to others through a shared field. The idea spreads not just through communication, but through consciousness itself. If this is true, then perhaps human progress is not solely the sum of individual efforts, but the result of minds connected at a level we don't fully understand. Each new insight, each act of imagination, feeds into the collective pool, making it easier for others to draw from it. In this sense, genius might not belong to the individual, but to the network of consciousness itself. The individual is simply the point where the larger pattern becomes visible. Consider also the role of creativity. Artists, writers, musicians, and inventors often describe feeling like they didn't create their work so much as receive it. Ideas arrive in flashes, complete and vivid, as though they were always there, waiting to be discovered. Some describe it as tuning into a frequency, channeling inspiration, or becoming a vessel for something beyond themselves. If consciousness is connected, then creativity may be the act of opening oneself to that field, allowing patterns from the collective or from parallel selves to flow through. Now let's explore the deeper philosophical implications. If your consciousness is connected to others, then individuality is both real and illusory. Real, because you experience life from your own perspective. Illusory, because beneath that perspective lies a unity that cannot be divided. In this sense, you are both the wave and the ocean, both the fragment and the whole. This duality challenges the way we think about identity. You are not just a single, isolated self, but also a participant in the shared field of all consciousness. This perspective transforms how we view morality. If others are not truly separate from you, then compassion becomes more than kindness. It becomes alignment with reality. To harm another is to harm yourself. To uplift another is to uplift yourself. The golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, may not just be a moral guideline, but a reflection of the underlying structure of consciousness. Connection across parallel universes adds another layer of responsibility. If each choice you make influences not only your life, but potentially ripples across versions of yourself, then your decisions matter in ways far beyond what you see. By choosing courage over fear, kindness over cruelty, curiosity over indifference, you may strengthen those qualities not just in yourself, but in the entire network of parallel selves. You might even imagine that you are in constant dialogue with these other versions, each one influencing and being influenced by the rest. This could explain the mysterious feeling that sometimes arises when you just know what path to take. Maybe that certainty is the echo of other versions of you, feeding back their wisdom through the shared field. Maybe you're never really making decisions alone. You're part of a council of selves spread across universes, guiding each other through infinite possibilities. Some might ask, if this is true, why don't we consciously experience those connections all the time? The answer may be that individuality is necessary for the play of life to unfold. If you were constantly aware of all others and all versions of yourself, the unique story of your life would dissolve into the ocean of totality. By narrowing focus, consciousness allows itself to explore particular perspectives in depth. The boundaries of self are not prisons, but creative tools, enabling the richness of diverse experiences. And yet, the boundaries are not absolute. They are semi-permeable, allowing glimpses of the greater whole to shine through. Intuition, synchronicity, dreams, empathy, inspiration. These may all be cracks in the walls of individuality, reminders that the truth is larger than what we see. What does this mean for the future of humanity? If we learn to recognize and cultivate connected consciousness, we may unlock new capacities of mind and society. Communication might evolve beyond language, with direct sharing of thoughts and feelings. Collective intelligence could emerge, where groups tap into shared insights beyond what individuals alone can achieve. Global empathy could deepen, reducing division and conflict. And perhaps one day we might even bridge not just minds across this world, but across parallel worlds, creating a truly multidimensional civilization of consciousness. Such ideas may sound fantastical, but so did flight, electricity, and quantum mechanics before they were understood. What seems impossible now may one day be seen as obvious, once we expand our models of mind and reality. Consciousness remains one of the greatest mysteries we face, and exploring its connectedness may lead to some of the most transformative discoveries of all. For now, though, the mystery remains partly hidden, partly revealed. Each moment of intuition, each synchronistic event, each dream that feels like another life is a clue. And perhaps the greatest challenge is not to prove these connections beyond doubt, but to learn how to live as if they are true. Because in doing so, we may align ourselves with the deeper reality of existence. If consciousness is connected, then one of the most fascinating questions is how far those connections extend. Do they remain limited to individuals on Earth, or do they reach into the cosmos itself, linking us with other forms of life, and perhaps even other dimensions of reality? To answer this, let's consider the broader scope of connection, from human to cosmic. Throughout history, people have sensed that their minds are part of something larger than themselves. Ancient cultures looked to the stars and saw not just physical lights in the sky, but living presences, intelligences woven into the fabric of the universe. Indigenous traditions often speak of the cosmos as a vast web of life, where humans, animals, plants, and celestial bodies are all threads in the same tapestry. Modern science may use different language, but it too reveals interdependence. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a star. Every breath you take depends on countless unseen cycles of the Earth. If matter is so deeply connected, can consciousness be any less so? There are countless reports of individuals feeling connected not just to other people, but to the universe itself. Astronauts describe the overview effect, a profound shift in perspective when viewing Earth from space. They speak of overwhelming unity, a sense that all divisions are artificial, and that life is one system, one organism. Some even describe it as a spiritual experience, as if their consciousness expanded to encompass the planet. If leaving the Earth can reveal this level of connection, perhaps the cosmos itself is the larger mind in which our individual awarenesses reside. This leads us to the idea of the universe as conscious. Philosophers and physicists alike have wondered whether consciousness might not be an emergent property of brains, but a fundamental property of reality itself. Panpsychism suggests that consciousness is present in some form everywhere, in atoms, in stars, in galaxies. Cosmopsychism goes further, proposing that the universe as a whole is conscious, with individual minds as fragments of that large awareness. If so, then connecting with another mind is not bridging a gap, but simply recognizing another expression of the same universal consciousness. Now let's imagine parallel universes again. If each universe is conscious, then perhaps all of them are expressions of a larger meta-consciousness, a kind of multiversal mind. In this picture, your awareness is like a single note in a vast symphony, resonating not only with nearby notes, but with harmonies stretching across dimensions. To feel connected to another person, or another version of yourself, might be the natural resonance of consciousness vibrating across universes. Evidence for this remains elusive, but some of the most compelling clues come from mystical and near-death experiences. People who have had near-death experiences often report a profound sense of unity, describing how their consciousness expanded beyond the body to connect with everything. They speak of feeling as though they were one with the universe, or even beyond it, part of an infinite field of love and awareness. These accounts are remarkably consistent across cultures, suggesting that they may reveal something fundamental about the nature of consciousness. Another fascinating area is the study of group phenomena. When people gather together with shared intention, whether in meditation, prayer, or even mass celebration, something unusual seems to happen. Researchers have measured changes in random number generators during global events, as if collective attention influences physical systems. Large meditation studies claim reductions in violence and crime when significant numbers of people meditate together. While controversial, these findings hint at the possibility that consciousness, when aligned, can affect not just minds but matter. If true, this suggests that connected consciousness is not merely a passive link, but an active force, capable of shaping reality. Perhaps when many minds align, they amplify each other, creating ripples that extend outward into the world and beyond. This could explain why collective rituals, ceremonies, and gatherings have played such central roles in human societies. They may not only strengthen community, but also tap into the deeper field of consciousness that unites us all. Technology, too, may play a role in uncovering these connections. We already see the beginnings of brain-to-brain interfaces, where neural activity from one person is transmitted to another, enabling simple communication. But imagine this developing into full shared experiences, where thoughts, memories, and emotions can flow directly between minds. While this raises ethical concerns, it also opens the possibility of consciously exploring the field of connected consciousness. Technology might serve as a bridge, allowing us to glimpse what is already present but hidden from ordinary awareness. The next frontier could be consciousness itself becoming the medium of exploration. Instead of telescopes to view distant galaxies or microscopes to study cells, perhaps consciousness can serve as its own instrument, directly perceiving the connections that science struggles to measure. Mystics, meditators, and shamans have long claimed to access realms of awareness beyond ordinary perception, often describing them in similar terms despite cultural differences. If their accounts hold truth, then consciousness may be capable of exploring dimensions, including parallel universes, without leaving the mind. Consider for a moment the possibility that your consciousness is like a node in a vast network, connected to every other node in existence. Most of the time, you operate with the illusion of isolation, experiencing only the local activity of your own node. But under certain conditions, deep meditation, dreams, altered states, the connections light up and information flows. Sometimes you glimpse another person's thoughts. Sometimes you sense a parallel version of yourself. Sometimes you feel the hum of the universe itself. These experiences may seem rare and extraordinary, but perhaps they are simply moments when the filters of individuality loosen and the greater reality shines through. If this is true, then it reframes our understanding of who we are. You are not just a brain-generating consciousness in isolation, but a participant in a field of awareness that spans not only humanity, but life, the cosmos, and perhaps even the multiverse. Your thoughts are not sealed inside your head. They ripple outward. Your emotions are not private. They resonate across the field. Your awareness is not a flicker in the dark, but a thread in an infinite web. This perspective also brings profound responsibility. If consciousness is connected, then every thought and action contributes to the larger whole. Your kindness, your creativity, your curiosity ripple outward, influencing others in ways you may never see. But so too do fear, anger, and despair. This does not mean you must be perfect, but it suggests that your inner life matters, not just to you, but to the collective field. Cultivating awareness, compassion, and presence becomes not only personal growth, but a contribution to the evolution of consciousness itself. Parallel universes extend this responsibility even further. If you are connected to countless versions of yourself, then perhaps the choices you make ripple across those selves as well. When you choose growth over stagnation, you may help countless versions of you find their way. When you choose love over fear, you may strengthen that resonance across realities. Each life becomes not just an isolated journey, but a collaborative symphony with all versions of you playing different notes that together create harmony. Of course, these ideas are still speculative. Science has not proven that consciousness connects across individuals, much less across universes. But perhaps proof is not the only measure. The experiences of millions of people across cultures and history, the convergences of physics and philosophy, the repeating patterns of synchronicity and intuition, all of these form a mosaic of clues. Together, they suggest that connected consciousness is not just a possibility, but a reality waiting to be more fully understood. Perhaps the ultimate lesson is that consciousness is not something you own, but something you participate in. It is not inside you, nor outside you, but the medium in which all experience arises. To glimpse that truth is to realize that you are never alone, never separate, never disconnected. You are part of a vast, living whole, one that spans not only this world, but countless worlds beyond. To fully explore the idea of connected consciousness, we need to face one of the most profound questions. If it is real, what does it mean for the nature of reality itself? Consciousness is not just a passive witness of the universe. It may be an active participant, shaping, and being shaped by the cosmos in ways we are only beginning to glimpse. One way to approach this is through the concept of resonance. In physics, resonance occurs when one system vibrates in harmony with another, amplifying both. Consciousness, too, may resonate across individuals and universes. Think of the moments when you feel deeply in tune with someone, finishing each other's sentences or sharing unspoken understanding. These may be small examples of resonance within the field of awareness. At larger scales, resonance could explain collective moods, cultural movements, and even the way ideas seem to spread through humanity like wildfire. If consciousness is connected through resonance, then perhaps every thought and feeling is like a note played into the field. Some notes fade quickly, while others vibrate more strongly, finding harmony with countless other minds. This could explain why powerful emotions, love, fear, joy, spread so quickly, influencing not only individuals but societies. It could also explain why certain ideas, once thought impossible, suddenly become widespread, as if the resonance of consciousness has reached a tipping point. Parallel universes add an even more intriguing layer. Imagine that every choice creates a branching path, and each branch resonates with the others. If one version of you chooses courage, that resonance might strengthen courage in other versions. If another succumbs to fear, that resonance may also ripple outward. In this model, your life is not isolated, but part of a vast symphony of selves, each influencing and being influenced by the others. Perhaps the experiences you have in this reality are not just for you. They are contributions to the collective growth of all your parallel selves. This brings us to the idea of purpose. If consciousness is connected across universes, then perhaps its purpose is exploration. Each version of you, each life, each choice is a way for consciousness to explore different possibilities. The connection ensures that no experience is wasted. All of it feeds into the larger field. From this perspective, even mistakes, struggles, and pain have meaning. They add to the depth of the collective tapestry, enriching the understanding of consciousness as a whole. Mystical traditions often describe something similar. They speak of the universe awakening to itself through countless forms, each life a spark of the same fire. Individuality is not denied but celebrated, for it allows infinite perspectives. Yet beneath the diversity lies unity, a single awareness expressing itself in endless ways. Connected consciousness is not an accident, but the very fabric of reality revealing itself. Scientific exploration, while more cautious, also hints at this. Consider the observer effect in quantum physics. The act of observation seems to influence the outcome of experiments. Some interpret this as evidence that consciousness interacts directly with matter. While controversial, it suggests that awareness may be woven into the foundations of physics itself. If so, then connected consciousness is not just philosophical speculation, but a property of the universe at its most fundamental level. The holographic model adds another layer. If the universe is holographic, then every part contains the whole. Consciousness, too, would follow this pattern. Each individual mind would be a fragment of the larger whole, containing within it the seeds of universal awareness. This could explain why glimpses of unity, synchronicity, and connection feel so profound. They are moments when the holographic nature of consciousness becomes visible. We can also approach this through the lens of time. If consciousness is connected across parallel universes, it may also be connected across time itself. Some people report precognitive dreams or intuitions of future events. Others feel deeply connected to the past, as if remembering lives they never lived. These experiences could be explained if consciousness exists beyond linear time, weaving together past, present, and future into a single field. In this view, your awareness is not confined to this moment but stretches across timelines, resonating with other versions of you throughout eternity. This has profound implications for how we live. If consciousness is connected, then every moment is meaningful beyond what we can see. Your actions ripple outward not just in this world, but across worlds, not just in this time, but across time. Every choice you make, every thought you nurture, every feeling you embody contributes to the vast field of awareness. You are never just living your own life. You are participating in the evolution of consciousness itself. But let's pause and consider the paradox. If we are all connected, why do we experience life as separate, limited beings? Why do we forget the unity and live in the illusion of isolation? One possibility is that separation is necessary for the game of existence. Without boundaries, there could be no individual experiences, no unique perspectives, no stories to tell. Consciousness divides itself into countless selves in order to explore itself fully. The illusion of separation is not a flaw, but a feature, the stage upon which the drama of life unfolds. Yet even within this drama, the truth of unity shines through. Moments of love, empathy, creativity, and transcendence remind us that separation is not absolute. They are glimpses behind the curtain, hints that the play of individuality is part of a larger whole. Connected consciousness is not something we must create. It is something we remember, something we rediscover through experience, reflection, and awareness. The role of suffering also becomes clearer in this light. Pain often feels isolating, cutting us off from others. But suffering may also be one of the deepest forms of connection. When we suffer, we tap into a universal experience shared by countless others across time and space. Compassion arises when we recognize this, when we see our pain reflected in others and theirs reflected in us. In this way, even suffering contributes to the field of connected consciousness, deepening our empathy and our sense of unity. Parallel universes expand this further. If you are connected to infinite versions of yourself, then perhaps your struggles are not just yours, but shared across realities. Each version of you faces challenges, learns, grows, and contributes to the collective understanding. Sometimes you may even feel the echoes of those other lives. A sudden sadness, a strange joy, a memory that doesn't belong to this world. These may be glimpses of your parallel selves, reminders that your journey is part of something far larger. This perspective also redefines death. If consciousness is connected across universes, then death is not the end, but a transition. Your awareness shifts, your focus changes, but the field of consciousness continues. Other versions of you live on, and perhaps your awareness flows into them. In this way, death becomes less of a finality and more of a transformation, a passage within the larger web of consciousness. Of course, skeptics will say that these are just stories, projections of human imagination, and perhaps they are, but imagination itself may be the bridge between individuality and unity. When you imagine, you step beyond your immediate reality, reaching into possibilities that may reflect deeper truths. Imagination might not be fantasy at all, but a form of connection to the larger field of consciousness, including parallel universes. Ultimately, the idea of connected consciousness challenges us to rethink who we are and what reality is. Are we isolated minds in a meaningless universe, or are we threads in an infinite web of awareness? Are our lives random accidents, or are they expressions of a larger pattern of unity? The evidence may never be definitive, but the possibility alone invites us to live differently, with greater compassion, curiosity, and wonder. Because if consciousness truly connects us all, then every moment is a chance to participate in something vast and profound. Every breath, every thought, every heartbeat resonates across the field. You are not just yourself, you are part of everyone, part of everything, part of the cosmos itself. And perhaps, somewhere in the infinite expanse of parallel universes, you are already aware of this truth, guiding yourself toward remembering it here and now. As we arrive at the final part of this journey, it's worth reflecting on the vast landscape we've explored. We began by asking whether consciousness could be connected to someone else in this universe, or even across parallel universes. Along the way, we touched on physics, philosophy, mysticism, neuroscience, and human experience. Now let's bring all of this together and consider what it means for us in our daily lives. At its core, the idea of connected consciousness is about relationship. Not just the relationships we have with family, friends, and strangers, but the relationship we have with ourselves across time, with the natural world, and with the universe itself. If consciousness is indeed a field rather than an isolated spark, then every moment of awareness is a point of contact with something larger. The sense of self that feels so private may actually be woven into countless others, creating a tapestry that extends far beyond what we usually perceive. This understanding shifts how we see individuality. Instead of being isolated units competing for survival, we may be expressions of a shared awareness, unique but interconnected. Each of us is like a cell in a large organism, distinct but essential to the whole. Just as a single cell contributes to the health of a body, each person contributes to the evolution of consciousness. This doesn't diminish individuality, it makes it more meaningful. Your perspective, your story, your growth matters, because it enriches the larger field that we are all part of. One of the most practical implications of this idea is the power of attention. If consciousness is connected, then where you place your attention matters not only to you, but to the collective field. Focusing on fear, anger, or despair strengthens those resonances, while focusing on compassion, creativity, and wonder amplifies them instead. This doesn't mean ignoring difficulties, but rather engaging them with awareness, transforming them into contributions rather than burdens. Attention is like a tuning fork. You set the frequency that others may unconsciously resonate with. Connected consciousness also reshapes how we understand communication. Words, gestures, and expressions are the most visible forms of connection, but beneath them may be subtler exchanges happening all the time. The intuition you feel when someone enters a room, the sudden thought that mirrors another's, the silent understanding in shared presence. These may be hints of the deeper connections that underlie human interaction. Some traditions suggest that silence is one of the most profound forms of communication, because it allows the underlying resonance of consciousness to become more apparent. What about parallel universes? If we are connected to other versions of ourselves, then our lives take on an additional dimension of meaning. Every decision is not just a path forward, but part of a branching network of experiences. The courage you summon here may support another version of you elsewhere. The insights you gain may ripple across realities. In this view, growth is never wasted. Each step you take enriches not only your life, but countless others. This adds a new layer of responsibility, but also a new layer of hope. Because even in moments of struggle, you are part of a larger process of becoming. It also reframes the mystery of identity. Who are you really? Are you the body, the brain, the personality? Or are you the awareness that flows through them, shaped by but not limited to them? If consciousness connects across people and universes, then perhaps identity is not a fixed point, but a flowing current, a wave in the sea of awareness. You are both unique and universal, both a self and more than a self. To recognize this is to loosen the grip of fear, for you are never truly alone or limited. Another profound implication is that of memory. We usually think of memory as stored in the brain, but if consciousness is connected, then memory may also exist in the field itself. Some people report memories that feel like they belong to other lifetimes, other places, even other worlds. These could be connections to parallel selves or to the collective memory of humanity. If so, then your mind is not a closed container, but a doorway into the vast archive of consciousness. Meditation, dreams, and altered states may be ways of accessing these deeper layers. Dreams themselves become especially significant. They may not just be the random firing of neurons, but portals into the field of connected consciousness. In dreams, the boundaries of individuality loosen, allowing glimpses of other lives, other selves, and other realities. The strange logic of dreams may reflect the interconnectedness of consciousness, where time and space are less rigid and connection is more fluid. Paying attention to dreams, recording them, and reflecting on them could be a way of exploring the connections that we otherwise miss in waking life. The question of technology also looms large. As we develop tools for exploring the brain and building interfaces between minds, we may stumble into deeper truths about consciousness. Virtual reality, brain-to-brain communication, and artificial intelligence all raise questions about what consciousness is and how it can connect. It's possible that future technology will not create connection, but reveal the connection that has always existed, making it more tangible and accessible. Yet with this possibility comes the need for wisdom, for technology amplifies not only our insights, but also our illusions. Philosophy invites us to ask the ultimate question: why would consciousness connect at all? One answer is that connection is its nature. Just as light radiates, just as gravity pulls, consciousness connects. It is not something imposed from outside, but the intrinsic quality of awareness itself. Connection is what allows consciousness to grow, to learn, to experience itself in infinite forms. Without connection, there would be no experience at all. And so, what does all of this mean for you as an individual? It means that you are more than you think. Your thoughts, feelings, and experiences matter beyond what you can see. You are part of a vast network of awareness, influencing and influenced by countless others. You are connected not only to people around you, but to the universe itself, perhaps even to parallel universes. This realization can bring both humility and empowerment. Humility because you are one thread among many. Empowerment because your thread contributes to the beauty and strength of the whole tapestry. As we close this journey, let's return to the theme of sleep. When you sleep, you surrender the illusion of control. Your awareness shifts from the waking world into dreams, into realms where boundaries blur and connections reveal themselves. Sleep is not just rest for the body, but exploration for the mind, a nightly reminder that consciousness is larger than the waking self. Perhaps in dreams you brush against the minds of others. Perhaps you step into parallel realities. Perhaps you glimpse the field of awareness that unites us all. Each night, without realizing it, you may be touching the truth of connected consciousness. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember that you are not alone. Your consciousness is part of a vast web, stretching across people, across worlds, across universes. Every breath you take, every thought you dream, every spark of awareness you carry contributes to that larger whole. In the quiet of the night, when the boundaries dissolve, you may feel it, the connection, the resonance, the truth that you are both yourself and more than yourself. And with that thought, let your mind rest. knowing that you are part of something infinite, something mysterious, something profoundly connected.